My name is Claire Morrison. I'm 27 years old, and at my parents' 30th anniversary party, my mother raised a glass and thanked every single person in that room. She thanked her sister for the floral arrangements. She thanked my father's golf buddy for lending his truck. She thanked the neighbors for bringing extra folding chairs. She even thanked the venue coordinator by name, twice, with a little catch in her voice. Then she looked out at 60 people sitting under string lights and hand-lettered signage I had spent 3 weeks designing and said, "And most of all, I want to thank my daughter Stephanie for being by my side every step of the way." The room erupted. Stephanie stood up, touched her chest, started crying on cue. I sat at the second table from the front with a glass of sparkling water in my hand, and a smile I had been practicing since I was old enough to understand that my feelings were not always welcome at family events. My aunt leaned over from the seat beside me and whispered, not unkindly, "You know how your mom is. You do the behind-the-scenes stuff. It's just how things work." Then she squeezed my arm and turned back toward the champagne. I looked around at the custom centerpieces I had sourced, at the menu cards I had typeset and printed at my own cost, at the welcome banner with my parents' names in hand-lettered script that had taken me an entire evening to illustrate digitally, at the event hashtag I had created, the photo display wall I had designed and assembled, the slideshow playing on a loop in the back corner that I had edited from 300 family photos they had handed me in a shoebox. Nobody mentioned my name once. I didn't storm out. I didn't cry in the bathroom. I finished my water, helped bus the dessert table, and drove home to my apartment in Raleigh in the dark with the windows down, thinking about a question I had never let myself ask out loud before. When they say family, do they mean all of us, or just the ones who photograph well? That should have been the night I finally let the whole thing go. Instead, it was the night everything started. Some background, because the anniversary party didn't happen inside a vacuum. My family runs a catering and event styling business out of Greensboro called Maison Morrison. My mother started it 12 years ago with my aunt as a weekend side project, and by the time I graduated design school, it had grown into something real. A full client roster, a venue partnership, a local reputation for the kind of warm, magazine spread aesthetic that books up fast in the spring wedding season. My mother asked me for help the summer after I graduated. "Just a quick logo refresh," she said. "It'll take you an hour." I did it in an afternoon, because I was 22 and still believed that using your skills for family was a form of love. That was 5 years ago. Since then, I had redesigned the full brand suite twice. I built and maintained their website. I created every menu template, every proposal deck, every social media graphic, every client welcome packet. I designed their seasonal lookbooks that went out to corporate accounts. When they landed a partnership with a regional bridal magazine, it was my layout work that made the feature spread look polished enough to print. My mother would call me on a Tuesday night and say, "We need something for a styled shoot on Saturday," and I would rearrange my freelance schedule and deliver it by Friday, because she was my mother and the business was family. I never sent an invoice. I never asked for payment. I told myself it was a contribution. What I didn't understand was the difference between contributing and being absorbed. I found out later that Maison Morrison had been billing clients a design services fee for years, $50 to $200 per project, line-itemed on invoices as custom design work. The work in question was mine. I had never been told it was being billed. I had never seen a dollar of it. But I didn't know that yet on the night of the anniversary party. All I knew was the quiet that settled into my apartment after I got home, and the way it felt different from other times. Less like sadness and more like clarity. My best friend Jordan called me at 11. She had been at the party and had watched the whole toast without saying anything, because she knows me well enough to know when I need silence before I need words. She asked how I was doing. I told her what I'd been thinking on the drive home. She was quiet for a second. Then she said, "Claire, they've been doing this to you for years, and you've let them because you thought eventually they'd notice. They've noticed. They just don't think it costs anything." That sentence kept me up until 2 in the morning. The next day, I did something I had never done. I opened every file folder connected to Maison Morrison's work. I had copies of almost everything because I was the one who had organized the shared drive in the first place. I started going through old emails. I pulled up the website backend where I still had admin credentials. I checked the portfolio page my mother used for client consultations, the one she had asked me to build 18 months earlier and never asked me to take down. Every piece of visual work on that page was mine. Then I found something else. Jordan works in small business accounting as a side gig, and when I texted her asking if there was a way to see what a business was billing for specific service categories without accessing their books, she walked me through a few things. I wasn't hacking anything. I was looking at my own project files, my own email thread history, the invoices clients had forwarded to me directly when they had questions about deliverables. In those threads, itemized clearly, were the design fees. Dozens of them, across 3 years of projects. I sat with that information for 2 days before I did anything. I needed to be sure I was thinking clearly and not just reacting to one bad night at a party. On the 3rd day, I made a decision. I drafted an email to my mother. I told her that effective immediately I was withdrawing my design services from Maison Morrison. I told her that my work, including logos, templates, website architecture, and branded assets, remained my intellectual property and could not be used for ongoing client work without a licensing agreement. I told her I was open to discussing a formal arrangement at fair market rate, but that I would need all current use of my materials to pause until that conversation happened. I kept it professional. I kept it short. I did not mention the anniversary party once. Then I changed my admin passwords on the website backend. I took my name off the site's hidden contributor credits. I flagged my design files in the shared drive as protected. And I forwarded my email to the one business partner outside the family involved in Maison Morrison, a venue coordinator named Patricia, who handled event day logistics and had her own small piece of the operation. My mother called 11 minutes after I sent it. I let it go to voicemail. Stephanie texted 4 minutes after that. "Mom is freaking out. What did you send her?" I typed back. "A professional notice about my work." She sent back 3 question marks. My father called next. Dad almost never calls. That told me more than anything else about how fast the panic had set in. His voicemail said, "Honey, can you call me back? I think there's been a misunderstanding and we'd really like to sort this out before it affects anything." Misunderstanding. There it was, right on schedule. 2 hours later, Patricia emailed me directly. She had seen my message to my mother and was reaching out because 2 upcoming events in the next 3 weeks used branded materials she now needed to confirm were cleared for use. She wasn't accusatory. She was just methodical, the way people are when they run an actual business and understand what liability means. I told her politely that as of today those materials were not cleared, and that she should request alternate assets from the Morrison side of the operation. By evening, my mother's texts had moved from confused to sharp. "You are going to cost us clients over a misunderstanding. People are depending on this. Why are you doing this right before spring season?" Spring season. Not, "I'm sorry you felt invisible at our party." Not, "I should have thanked you." Spring season. I turned my phone face down on the kitchen counter and cooked dinner with the quiet intention of someone who has finally decided to stop waiting for an apology that was never going to arrive on its own. My aunt called the next morning. My aunt and I have always had a warmer relationship than my mother and I could hear in her voice that she was trying to play the middle. She said, "Claire, your mother is beside herself. Whatever happened, can you two just sit down and talk?" I said. "I'd be happy to talk once she acknowledges that she's been billing clients for my work for 3 years without telling me." The line went very quiet. Then my aunt said, "I don't know anything about that." I said, "I know, and I believe you, but someone does." That silence stretched for a long time. After we hung up, I called Jordan and asked her to come over. She showed up with her laptop and a bag of groceries, and we spent 3 hours going through everything I had documented. She's careful and methodical in a way I'm not, and she pulled out things I had half noticed and moved past. A client email from 18 months ago where my mother had described me to a corporate account as the company's in-house creative director. A proposal from 2 years back where the Maison Morrison deck listed a design retainer as a core service offering. A testimonial on the website that specifically praised the brand's exceptional visual identity as a reason the client had booked. "They built a premium price point on your credentials," Jordan said. Not with anger, just the flat voice of someone reading a balance sheet. "And you've been delivering that work for free. while they charged for it. I had known this abstractly. Hearing it stated plainly was different. I sent one more email that evening. This one to a woman named Diane Cho. Diane was a business development contact at a local chamber of commerce who had referred several clients to Maison Morrison over the past 2 years, based partly on the strength of the brand presentation. I had met Diane once at a small business showcase where I had been there to support my mother's booth, and she had been under the impression I was a principal of the business. I didn't say anything inflammatory. I simply introduced myself as the independent designer responsible for Maison Morrison's visual identity and explained that I had ended my working relationship with the company and wanted to ensure there was no confusion about my ongoing affiliation. I thanked her and left it there. Jordan looked at me when I hit send. I said, "If they built credibility using my name, the people who trusted that credibility deserve to know the truth." She nodded slowly. "You're not angry, are you? You're just done." I thought about that. Done wasn't quite right. Done felt passive. What I was, I think, was finally deciding to be the same size as the truth. My mother and father drove from Greensboro on a Saturday. I knew they were coming because Stephanie texted me that morning with a message so transparently choreographed I almost felt sorry for her. "Mom and Dad want to come talk to you today. I think you should hear them out. They're really worried, and I think there's been a big misunderstanding about the business stuff." That word again. Misunderstanding. The family had clearly aligned on a version. I was at home. I had no intention of going anywhere. I had also spent the previous 2 evenings organizing every document, every email thread, every invoice I had located into a single, clear folder. Not because I planned to lead with it, but because I needed to know exactly what I was standing on. They knocked at 1:15. My mother and my father, and Stephanie, who I had not expected, all 3 of them standing on the landing outside my apartment door. My mother had dressed up. That detail hit me unexpectedly. The fact that she had put on her good blazer and her pearl earrings to come argue with her daughter. My father was holding a legal pad, which told me everything about how they had framed this drive. I opened the door and stood in the frame. I didn't step aside. My mother started before I said a word. "Claire, we need to talk, please, not out here in the hallway. Here is why I let them in, and I want to be clear about this because I made the decision deliberately. I let them in because I needed them to hear what I had to say in a space where they could not simply drive away. I let them in because I was not afraid of them, and I needed them to understand that. I let them in because some conversations have to happen face to face before anything real can change." I stepped back. They came in. I didn't offer anyone a seat, and I didn't apologize for the fact that I stayed standing. My mother looked around my apartment the way she always does, a quick inventory of whether things are in order. Then she looked at me with an expression I recognized from childhood. The pained, controlled look she uses when she wants to lead with emotion before anyone can lead with facts. "What you sent, Patricia, has put 2 events in serious jeopardy," she said. "We have a styled brunch next weekend and a corporate anniversary dinner in 3 weeks, and now our venue partner is asking for written confirmation of every design asset we intend to use." I said, "That sounds like a problem you created." My father stepped in, steadier. "Claire, we understand you may have felt some things were handled poorly, but the business can't just stop while we work through family feelings." Family feelings. I repeated those 2 words back to him once, evenly. He had the grace to flinch. Stephanie tried next. She's always been the emollient one, the one who comes in after the hard line with something softer. "Claire, nobody meant to leave you out of the toast. Mom was nervous, and she went blank. It happens." "The toast was 6 minutes long," I said. She thanked the venue coordinator by first and last name. Nobody answered that. My mother tried a different angle. Her voice shifted into something gentler, with the slight tremor she uses when she wants to signal hurt. "I have poured everything into that business. Everything. And you're willing to let it fall apart because you felt overlooked at a party?" I looked at her for a moment. "I'm not letting anything fall apart. I'm taking back ownership of my own work. Those aren't the same thing. It was family work," she said. "You were helping family. Then why was there a design services line item on your client invoices?" The room went still in the way rooms do when something finally gets said that everyone in them has been arranging themselves around. My father's hand tightened on the legal pad. Stephanie looked at my mother, What design services fee? My mother said, that is standard in the industry. All event companies include creative fees. I said, for work performed by someone on payroll, or work licensed from an independent contractor, neither of which describes what happened here. My mother's expression changed, not to guilt, to something harder. You are trying to make me look like a criminal because I forgot to mention you in a toast. I'm trying to tell you that for 5 years you sold my work as a premium service offering and kept the income. That's not about the toast. The toast just finally made me look at the rest of it clearly. Stephanie was still staring at my mother. She asked again, more slowly this time. Mom, was Claire's design work being charged to clients? My mother said, it was absorbed into the overall package pricing. That's not an answer, Stephanie said. And that surprised me. I had not expected Stephanie to push. She had spent our whole lives being the one my mother leaned toward, and I had assumed she would follow the family script all the way through this conversation. My father set the legal pad on my kitchen counter without opening it. He said, quietly, there were some pricing decisions made over the years that probably should have been discussed with you. Probably, I said. He nodded once, and in that nod was an entire history he was acknowledging without being willing to say out loud. My mother pivoted fast, the way she always does when she feels the ground moving under a conversation. We can discuss compensation. If you feel you deserve payment for past work, we can sit down and talk about that. But right now, we need you to restore access to the website and confirm to Patricia that the materials for the next 3 weeks are cleared. After that, we can have a proper conversation about everything else. I almost admired the architecture of that. Fix the business crisis first. Feel your feelings later. Classic. I said, no. She blinked. No. I'm not restoring access, and I'm not clearing materials before we have the conversation you want to save for later. Because in my experience, later never actually arrives. My mother pressed her lips together. She said, do you understand what you are doing to this family? I said, do you understand what this family has been doing to me? She sat down on my couch without being invited. It was a move designed to signal collapse, to soften the room, to make me feel like I was being cruel to someone who was already down. I recognized it. I stayed standing. After everything we've given you, she started. And I stopped her there. Please don't do the gratitude argument. I have heard it my whole life, and it has never once included anything I actually asked for, Stephanie said from the corner, very quietly. She has a point, Mom. My mother looked at her like she had just spoken in a foreign language. My father cleared his throat. He said, Claire, what do you need from us to move forward? A real acknowledgement. Not a we're sorry you felt that way. An acknowledgement that you billed clients for my work without telling me, that you've used my name and my credentials to book business for years, and that I have been treated as a resource rather than a person in this family. That's what I need before I'll consider any kind of arrangement going forward. Nobody spoke for a long time. My mother looked at the window. My father looked at his hands. Stephanie looked at me with an expression I couldn't fully read. Something between guilt and the particular disorientation of someone realizing the story they've been living inside had a different floor plan than they thought. Then my mother said the thing that unlocked everything and nothing at once. She said, I never thought you minded. I let that sit in the air for a moment. That's the whole problem, I said. You never thought to ask. My father said he was sorry. He said it plainly, without qualifiers, and I believe he meant it in the limited way a man can mean something when he's spent 20 years choosing comfort over confrontation. He said he had known the fees were being charged, and he had assumed I had some informal understanding with my mother about it. He said, assuming had been the wrong choice. My mother didn't apologize that day. She left with the expression of someone who has been found out and is still deciding what to feel about it. Stephanie was the last to go. At the door, she stopped and looked back at me. She said, I didn't know about the fees. I really didn't. I told her I believed her. She said, I also didn't notice how much you were doing. For the business, for them. I didn't notice because it was easy not to. That was the most honest sentence anyone in my family had said to me in years. I told her I appreciated it. I told her it wasn't nothing. She nodded and left. What happened after that moved faster than I expected. Patricia, once she understood the full picture, was not interested in running events on uncleared assets. She paused her end of the partnership and requested documentation showing proper creative licensing before she would proceed. Without her venue coordination, 2 of Maison Morrison's booked spring events were in genuine trouble. My mother called Diane Cho to explain. Diane was polite and professional and quietly began routing her chamber referrals elsewhere. She told me this herself in a short email about 2 weeks later, not to be unkind to my family, but because she said she needed to know that the people she recommended operated with full transparency. A graphic design colleague of mine had a long-standing contact at the bridal magazine where Maison Morrison's feature had run. That contact reached out to confirm whether my name should still be listed in the digital archive as the designer of the spread, given the change in my relationship with the company. My mother had to answer that question in writing. Answers in writing have a way of clarifying things. By the end of March, Maison Morrison had paused 3 events, lost 2 corporate referrals, and was operating with a website that had been professionally reset to a basic template because the one I had built was mine. My mother hired a designer on Fiverr for an emergency rebrand. I saw it go up. It was fine, generic, but functional. That told me something I needed to know, which was that the business could exist without me. It was just going to have to exist without the premium they had been charging in my name. My father called me about a month after the apartment visit. Not about the business. He called on a Sunday evening and talked for a long time about things I had not expected him to say. He talked about how he had watched my mother position herself as the creative visionary of the company for years and had never said out loud that the creative vision was mostly mine. He said he had been choosing not to see things clearly because seeing them clearly would have required him to act, and acting would have been uncomfortable. He said uncomfortable was a cowardly reason to let something unfair continue. I didn't forgive him on that call. But I didn't hang up either. Apologies that arrive after consequences are still apologies. They just have to carry more weight to count for the same amount. Jordan and I spent Easter weekend at her family's place in Asheville, eating too much and watching old movies and doing nothing that required me to be useful to anyone except myself. It was the most relaxed I had felt in years. I kept noticing it, the absence of the background hum of waiting for someone to need something from me. I hadn't realized how constant that sound had been until it stopped. In April, I got a call from a regional lifestyle brand, looking for a creative director on contract for a 6-month campaign. Someone had been referred to me by a client whose small business branding I had done 2 years earlier. The contract rate was 4 times what Maison Morrison had been billing clients for my design services category. When I signed it, I sat in my car in the parking lot for a minute and let the irony fully land. The family that treated my work as something they were owed ended up losing access to exactly the value they had been quietly selling. My mother emailed me in May, not a text, an actual email, which is how I knew it was an attempt at something real rather than a management move. She said the spring season had been hard. She said she had done some reflecting. She said she had always told herself that what she was doing with the fee structure was a kind of keeping things in the family, a way of making the business money that could theoretically benefit all of us eventually. She said writing that out had made her realize how much she had needed to believe something that was primarily convenient for her. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't ask for access restored. She said she hoped I was doing well, and that she understood if I needed significant time before anything between us could change. That was the first thing she had ever sent me that wasn't also a request. I haven't decided yet what role she gets to have in my life going forward. Some doors don't swing back to exactly the position they were in before. They open somewhere slightly different, or they stay partially closed for a long time while you figure out whether the room on the other side has actually changed. That's not punishment, that's maintenance. There's a difference, and I spent a long time not knowing it. Stephanie and I have had coffee twice since the apartment conversation. She's been asking questions, real ones, about our childhood and the family dynamics and the particular way we were each shaped by being in different positions in our mother's world. She asked me once if I had always felt this invisible or if there was a point where it changed. I told her it was gradual, the way most chronic things are, 100 small moments that individually felt manageable until they didn't. She listened without defending anyone, including herself. That's rarer than people think. I'm not going to tell you everything ended with a group hug and a holiday dinner where everyone finally said the right things. That's not the story. The story is smaller and more honest than that. My father and I talk on the phone occasionally, and he is trying in the way that people try when they've spent a long time not trying and don't know exactly how to start. My mother and I are in an email correspondence that is civil and careful and has not yet become warm. Stephanie is becoming someone I think I might actually know someday. And I am a person who spent years letting the people I loved most convince me that usefulness and love were the same thing. I was the daughter who made everything look beautiful while someone else took the bow. The person who assumed that if I contributed enough, quietly enough, for long enough, the acknowledgement would eventually come. It doesn't work that way. I know that now. What I also know is this. When I finally stopped absorbing the cost of everyone else's comfort, when I took up the space that my work actually deserved, the system that had depended on my smallness had nowhere left to go. Because systems built on one person's silence can only run as long as that person keeps agreeing to be quiet. I stopped agreeing. And for the first time in my adult life, the room finally made sense. So here's what I want to ask you, because I think about this more than I probably should. If the people closest to you have been building something real on top of your invisible labor, and they only notice when you take it back, what does that tell you about what they were actually grateful for? Was it you? Or was it what you were willing to give them? Because there's a difference. And once you see it, there is no going back to pretending you don't.